when the member states got together for the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, they agreed on a declaration. And one of the 12 things that they committed to do was to improve something called digital cooperation. In other words, they committed to work together across boundaries, territorial boundaries, but also across domains, which means the government sector, the private sector, civil society, academia, and the technology community to address the misuse of these technologies, but also to address the misuse of these technologies to drive progress on the sustainable development goals. We are in Kenya, and we have a very powerful example here how digital technologies can improve the lives of ordinary citizens, can help accelerate development. And I'm speaking, of course, of M-Pesa. M-Pesa and M-Pesa-like solutions like UPI in India have helped small business people access the financial market, have helped the poor with few means to access the modern economy. So this is just one example of the potential of digital technologies for sustainable development. So while we address the risks, the misuse, we also have to look at the opportunity and make sure that everyone can participate in that opportunity. The Global Digital Compact, the reason why we are all here today and tomorrow. This is a unique opportunity. It's a once in a generation opportunity at the Summit of the Future in 2024 to reboot multilateralism, to commit ourselves again at the highest level to address our planetary challenges, from debt, lack of development finance, to climate change, environmental degradation, and the digital challenge. There are a number of issues on the agenda. One of the 6 tracks for the Summit of the Future is the digital track. And this track is supposed to result in this high-level document called the Global Digital Compact. This will be, as you've mentioned, will be an opportunity to agree on some shared principles for an open, free, secure, and inclusive digital future. It's an opportunity to lay out not only these shared principles, but also some shared approaches, some priorities. So it's time now to move from principles to action. And this compact can help us lay the foundation for that action across borders and across domains to improve the digital experience for everyone. There are several themes for the proposed Global Digital Compact. One of those themes is addressing the digital divide. And we'll have the opportunity over the next 2 days to get into what is the digital divide. Is it only connectivity, or are there other issues around data and AI, content, accessibility, affordability that should be considered part of the digital divide? Then protecting human rights online. Human rights offline are human rights online. So how do we make sure that rights are not violated? They are protected, they are upheld. So there are some other themes, digital public goods, digital public infrastructure, governing artificial intelligence, which is becoming more and more powerful. Some of you may have heard about ChatGPT, which effectively is reinventing internet search. How do you access knowledge on the internet? These are extremely powerful technologies. So we need to think about how do we align them with our human values. So these are just a few examples of what is on the table with the Global Digital Compact. I'm here to listen, to learn from all of you. And for me, there is one very, very important goal, which is, as the UNSG's Tech Envoy, I've been asked to work with member states to assess the ambition for the Global Digital Compact. We have a lot of good work on the table. We need to lift it up by 15-20% so that it becomes of the level that leaders can look at. It should not be banal, it should not be commonplace, it should be action-oriented, it should be uplifting, it should be powerful. So here is my challenge for you. Over the next 2 days, can we lift up the conversation, go to that level which is worth the while for leaders? And the other challenge for you is, can we find the political center of the Global Digital Compact? And could that political center reflect the aspirations of Africa? So from the perspective of the United Nations, if we can center the Global Digital Compact around the aspirations of Africa, around the aspirations in Southern Asia and other parts of the Global South that are very, very interested in leveraging the digital opportunity, but are also concerned that technology may be misused and some people may be left behind. So that is what I'm looking for over the next 2 days. And I'm really grateful to the organizers, also GIZ, our moderators, for helping us make this happen.
Bonjour, Jambo. You'll notice that the photo there is slightly different from me because it has hair and I don't have hair. So it was taken a few minutes before I got into the room, I think. But before I start reading the speech, which is the reason why I'm here, I just want to request you to accept the apologies of our Cabinet Secretary, Mr. Eliud Owalo. As you know, we have a government that is barely 1 month, 2 months in office. The CS has just been in office one month. Last week on Friday, the principal secretaries were sworn in, so there's still a lot of transition happening. And though the intention was the CS to be here, but they had to go in for a meeting with the newly sworn in principal secretaries. So I was coming here as a participant, but now I've been given this unique honor to address you. So, Your Excellency Sebastian Groth, the German ambassador to Kenya, Your Excellency Mr. Amandeep Singh Gill, UN Secretary General's Envoy on Technology, Your Excellency Dr. Regina Greenberger, Cyber Ambassador for the Federal Foreign Office, Mr. Yves Iradukunda, Permanent Secretary, Minister of ICT and Innovation, Rwanda, distinguished guests, my colleagues from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Diaspora Affairs in Kenya, my colleagues from Ministry of Information, Communication and the Digital Economy, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to join you this morning. We are grateful that Kenya was among the 3 countries that were nominated to co-host the Global Digital Compact consultations, which we are here for today. Kenya fully supports the UN report, Our Common Agenda, and is in concurrence with all the 12 commitments which have been made in the Common Agenda, as they are aligned to the development agenda of the government of Kenya. As we undertake to implement these commitments, we in Kenya believe in the need to accelerate the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. The commitment, for example, one of the commitments, the commitment Protect Our Planet, is in line with our government's commitment to adhere to environmental agreements that Kenya is signatory to as we implement our plans and strategies in Kenya. Key among the commitments, the Common Agenda, is the need to improve the digital cooperation through the Global Digital Compact, GDC. One of the objectives of the GDC is to reconnect all people, including schools, to the internet. This again is very much aligned with the commitment of the government of Kenya to avail universal broadband availability to its citizens throughout the country. The aim of the government is to increase and fast-track broadband connectivity across the whole of Kenya through construction of an extra 100,000 kilometers of national fiber optic cable network. And the aim is to make sure that every village and eventually every Kenyan is connected to the internet. Furthermore, the government is committed to enhancing government service delivery through digitalization of all critical government processes, and the commitment is to make available at least 80% of government services online in the next 1 year. Just like the UN, Kenya believes that digital transformation offers tremendous opportunities, including the potential to contribute to the achievement of the sustainable goals, the Sustainable Development Goals. However, we also know that when improperly used, digital technologies can fuel divisions within and between countries, increase insecurity, undermine human rights, and exacerbate inequality. Therefore, shaping a shared vision on digital cooperation and a digital future that show the full potential for beneficial technology usage and addressing digital trust and security must continue to be a priority, as our world is now more than ever relying on digital tools for connectivity and socio-economic prosperity. Kenya is well and truly on its way towards a fully fledged digital economy and knowledge-driven society. This is due to our forward-looking investment and innovation in core digital infrastructure and a booming tech ecosystem producing digital applications and services. The tech envoy referenced M-Pesa, which is known for all over the world. The nomination of Kenya to host this vibrant digital consultation that brings together participants from different African countries, from various stakeholder groups, including government, academia, civil society, private sector, among others, is strong testament to the strides we have made in the digital space in our country. Kenya has developed robust and dynamic policy, legal, and regulatory frameworks to support and promote digital inclusion and a sustainable digital economy. Among the pillars that we've identified in our digital economy blueprint as key in driving transformation are digitization of government services, digital business, infrastructure, innovation-driven entrepreneurship, digital skills, and digital inclusion, as well as creating awareness on data protection. All this is supported through a regulatory environment that promote the growth of digital technologies in Kenya. I wish to sincerely thank the federal government of Germany, as well as the UN, as well as other partners for committing to support and facilitate a cross-regional multi-stakeholder process in close coordination with the Office of the UN Secretary General's Envoy on Technology. You can count on Kenya's continued support and commitment as we continue to play our role as a trusted member of the United Nations. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Bonjour à tous et toutes. I'm Jumbo. The tech envoy said he was nominated 5 months ago. I was nominated 3 months ago. So still the new kid on the block. So I'm very happy to be here. First of all, I would like to welcome you, UN Secretary General's Envoy on Technology, Under Secretary General Mr. Amandeep Singh Gill. I also would like to welcome the representative of the ICT Ministry, Engineer Daniel Obam, who is the CEO of the National Communication Secretariat. And I really, I'm very happy to welcome my good friend and former colleague also from the Foreign Ministry, Regine Greenberger, who arrived already on Friday evening or Saturday, and we had a wonderful dinner, and she visited the Nairobi National Park and was really impressed also by the environments of this dynamic city of Nairobi. So good morning once again. I'm very happy that you all made the way to Nairobi, especially the guests from, not from Kenya, but from other parts of Africa. I think, as the special envoy said, it's a really timely and very important project. That is the reason that you're coming here, and it's also the reason why the German government took it from the very beginning very seriously, and is very happy to partner with the United Nations, but also with 3 countries around the world to prepare the global digital compact. So first of all, I would like to thank also the Kenyan government. From the very beginning, when we made this proposal to work on this together with Principal Secretary of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Kamau, was the former Principal Secretary. From the very beginning, he was all in for it, and I'm also very happy that we have a number of colleagues from the MFA here around the table. And the whole preparation of this conference was really a very good cooperation between the embassy, between Berlin, between the United Nations and the institutions here in Kenya. So why we are here in Nairobi, I think, goes without big explanations. Nairobi is really one of the hubs of technology, of ICT, not only in Eastern Africa, not only in Africa, I would even say around the world. And I always get a bit humble when you talk about GIZ and all the good projects that we are supporting here, because sometimes I have the feeling we can learn a lot from you and not you from us, especially in the field of digital economy, of startups, of venture capital, of all what you're doing in this field. So it was a good choice to come to Kenya, and welcome once again. And as I said in the beginning, it's a very timely and important project, and it's a very political project also. It's one of the core elements of the General Secretary's big project, which has the headline Our Common Agenda, and which should prepare also the United Nations for the next political cycle to the end of this decade, but also beyond. So this roadmap for digital cooperation will bring all stakeholders together, as was said earlier. So it's not only government-driven, it's private sector-driven, it's civil society-driven. The aim is to see what role digitalization can play also with regard to the Sustainable Development Goals. These consultations ask some very pertinent questions, and I've seen that you will have a number of roundtables where you will do the hard work. This is only the opening. The hard work will start later, and there we need all your input and all your brain power. So how the future Global Digital Compact can facilitate the use of digital technologies in order to realize the 2030 SDG agenda, which is under a lot of pressure right now, as we all know, also due to the war of Russia against Ukraine and all other elements like climate change. So how can we work against this also with the help of digital technology? But how can it also help to enhance the digital access for societies and individuals across the global south, which was also said earlier? So how to give access to the people so that they can benefit socially, economically by digital technologies. But we will also discuss, or you will also discuss, about the risks and challenges associated with new technologies. This is about human rights, but also it's about cybersecurity. Just a few days ago, there was an article in the Business Daily about how small, medium-sized companies in Kenya are affected also by cybersecurity issues. Around 50% of them have already experienced attacks on their servers, on their systems. So this is also a very important point, I think, in this whole discussion. So alongside Kenya, Germany is teaming up with Mexico and India. So these are our three partners around the world. But it is a pleasure for us to work with you here in Africa. It's not only because of the famous Silicon Savannah, but it's also because of the expertise that you have here in Nairobi and of the whole digital community. So M-Pesa was mentioned earlier, but it's not. I think it's not only M-Pesa. It's this whole ecosystem of innovation and this openness to technology. 4 to 6 weeks ago, we had a delegation that was looking into opportunities for cooperation in civil drones, for agriculture and for transportation. And the German representatives were so enthusiastic about the reception here in Kenya and this openness of the business partners and of the institutions on the other side of the table. And this is also very important because it's a bit sad, but Africa still is not seen as this broad continent of opportunities, also of technological and economic opportunities. And this conference, I think, can also change the perspective back to capitals in Europe and around the world. So one last point I would like to make is that it's not, for us, it's not about development cooperation. For us, it's about a political cooperation. What we do here is not projects, support, even if GIZ is the main motor behind it. But for us, it's an eminent political question, how to shape the digital future. It's not about development cooperation. So we need your thoughts, your input, and as I said, your brain power in order to develop the next digital cycle, inclusive, respecting human rights and giving opportunities to the people, economic and social access as the most important points. So thank you once again for making the journey, for participating. I wish you really fruitful, probably controversial, heated discussions, good ideas. It will all be collected and be part of this multi-stakeholder process that is preparing this digital compact. So it's important that you are here. It's important that you raise your voice, that you participate in the roundtable discussions. Thank you very much and all the best for the next 2 days.
Good morning. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and especially those online. My name is Nenna. I come from the internet. I do not represent any country, and so I'll be speaking on behalf of myself and the people who are online like myself. I wanted to say a big thank you to the interpretation team. It hasn't been easy, but they've been doing a great job so far. I will be speaking for 7 minutes, and I'd like to answer questions for 3 minutes. This is one of the rare events where we are doing good on time. Thank you very much to the moderating team. I was embarrassed when they were asking about age because I felt old. I was in the last set before the one who was 60, who is 60. I come from the era of digital solidarity. It was a notion before digital cooperation. That was about 20 years ago. There was something called the Digital Solidarity Fund, and I was the vice president. And so between then and now, we've worked in Africa supporting the power of ICT for D to raise human development. Some 5 years ago, the Secretary General came to my boss, Tim Berners-Lee, who is the inventor of the World Wide Web, and said he wanted us to be part of what was going to be the high-level panel. And the lady that USG mentioned, Nanjira, who is Kenyan, was reporting to me. I was policy director at the Web Foundation then. And quite a number of the members of the high-level panel I knew. And we were like, so when they asked my boss, he said, oh, that's our UN girl. She knows about those things. She's the e-diplomat. She knows those things. I'm like, okay. That was how I got into what became the report on an era of digital collaboration that gave birth to what we know today as Digital Cooperation Agenda. I want to pause, not about myself, but about the gentleman who spoke to us, Under-Secretary General Amandeep Gill Singh. It is very important to understand that the confidence we have in him as a person is what made me leave my matches at Qatar. I was at the World Cup and said yes to GIZ to come here. Because one of the things that I am trying to fight for is trust in the process of the GDC. And human beings, trust is built not about systems, but about human beings. So I wanted to tell you, USG, that I have trust in your person. You are a scientist. He was the Indian ambassador to the UN based in Geneva. We don't have a lot of Indians who speak French. And as a Francophone from Abidjan, I really appreciate that. We have someone who is open in his spirit, who lives multi-stakeholderism. And that is very important as we go along in this process. I now want to speak to you about civil society engagement. For those of you who knew me, I was slimmer and crazier, but now I've grown wiser and wider, and I speak little, and I fight less. I lead a group of about 100 organizations that are interested in digital cooperation. We have a platform where we speak, and I'm happy to add any of you civil society organizations who want to engage with others. We have engaged with the Office of the President of General Assembly, with the UN Secretary General himself, and with the initial office that was there before USG was nominated. It's very important for us as civil society to support government officials in the GDC journey. This is not a place where you come to do militantism. I don't know if that is English. This is not a place for activism. It is a place for collaboration and cooperation. And that is, if you forget every other thing I've said now, please remember that. This is not a place where you come to fling mud and say what is not going on with the government. This is the session, this is the movement where we say we recognize that this is not going on well, but we are bringing this to the table, and we hope that together we can achieve this. And that is why I want to pause to say thank you to GIZ. Ambassador Regina, please take my personal thanks back to BMZ and the German government. I will let you know why. I've been around for a long time in this. There were no candidates from the German government for the office of the tech envoy. There were other countries who were very forward, but I'm encouraged that Germany is living what those countries told us they would do. So I'm really very thankful for that. No, don't forget that the one who's speaking is an activist, so I'm going to ask of some things later on. About the consultations, like they said here, I have in my office at the Web Foundation held conversations in Ghana, in Cote d'Ivoire, on the web, in UAE, with women, with civic tech activists, with traditional rulers, with women in the market, with young people. I speak and breathe global digital cooperation. I hope to continue doing so until this year. End of this year, I'll be moving forward from Web Foundation, and I'll have to decide whether I want to do this again, to keep seeing your old faces in the same meetings, speaking about the same things, or I want to do something else. We also held a national consultation in Burkina Faso. We held one during the World Telecoms Development Conference in Kigali, for those of you who are in the ITU and telecoms field. The 5-minute video you saw earlier on that didn't play well is still sitting on my laptop. I made that video over 3 days without sleeping. If you want any of the individual videos, I have them here. So you can pick them up from anyone. They are all there. So we support, in my role, I support the Office of the Tech Envoy, drafting things, making sure that this pulls out well. Now on the GDC itself, between now and 2024, I'd like to ask us, it is not enough to come to this meeting. The reason we made that video, we actually have a guide on how to do a consultation like this at your own country level. So, national level, would you be able to reproduce this? There is a form on the, can we remove this person and come back to the GDC, the website of the UN Tech Envoy? Because there is a form there, a survey, where you can input the result of your own consultation. So I'm looking at us doing a national consultation in Kenya for Kenyans. You see what I mean? A multi-stakeholder one for Kenyans. So somewhere in Nakuru, any community can do that. We don't need GIZ to host consultations. We can do this at national level. There are 7 sub-topics under the GDC. I think that those of us who are from Article 19 Access Now, we can host one on human rights, or privacy, or global commons. We can have thematic consultations. I personally, as an African woman, I'm interested in the gender agenda, and I'd like to input something on gender. We can have one of private sector and all of that. So I do believe that continued engagement is very important, and we have up till the end of the March next year to be able to do that. So please, when we speak, we can have one in our organization and say, okay, this is who we are. We want to have a conversation. We want the Office of the Tech Envoy to hear us. We want the co-facilitators to know what we think, and this is it. That is clearly possible, and that is what I want to encourage us to do. But then after the GDC has been adopted by 2024, what happens next? That is where I'd want to pause to ask us to think. I came, like I said in the beginning, from the Digital Solidarity Days. The Global Digital Compact will be adopted by member states of the UN, not individuals. So Kenya will sign up on behalf of all Kenyans. But then what happens after that? In my short term, what I've seen is that countries only bring issues to the UN when they cannot handle it by themselves. So when it is totally fucked up, then they call the UN to come and take care of it. So the very fact that digital cooperation is a UN agenda is making me afraid. I will say that again. Because what may happen is that we are going to adopt a wonderful document, have a great thing in New York during UNGA, during the General Assembly in 2024, and then everybody's going to walk away. That is my first concern. Now, when that happens, what is going to happen at national level? Are we going to say, yes, people in Estonia have a great digital life, but people in Kenya don't. And we want to take it and make it national, and make it work for Wananchi, make it work for women, make it work for youth. That's my first challenge. My other challenge is in the repeat trauma. We had something called Digital Solidarity Fund. It was very early, an IGF. We agreed that IGF would not have a policy-making power. And so for the past 17 years, we've had national IGFs, we have sub-regional IGFs, we have continental IGF, we have global IGF. We come there, we talk, and we go. For the past 17 years, we have not decided a thing. My second fear is, are we going to repeat the same with the Global Digital Compact? How much time do I have?
Do you still want some questions?
Yes, okay. My last fear is on the Office of the Tech Envoy himself. Now, USG, with all love, with all the trust I have in you, with all the wonderful person you are, your office is not empowered to implement. In his mandate, he is only the face of digital cooperation. So he's an envoy. Someone sends him, right? But then as Africans, we have a development agenda. So his office doesn't have enough, he doesn't even have enough staff. So he has a great head, he's a wonderful gentleman, he has a great heart, but then he doesn't have any pocket at all. You see what, you heard what I meant? So we cannot ask him to support national implementation. And so his office is great, but his office does not have power to take things further. And that is my third fear. My other fear, which has nothing to do with GDC, is that Morocco may not move on to quarterfinals and Africa will be out of the whole of the World Cup. Thank you.
Just for a moment. Thank you. Excellent finish. Nana. So, Nana, if I understood correctly, you, I saw like three main points that you mentioned. First of all, you would very much invite various countries, African countries, Kenya as well, to not only limit themselves to the international consultation, or the regional consultation, but also see that on the national level as well. And the second thing I found really important was that you're very much looking to sustain this consultation process and not letting it be a one-time thing, so to say, but transform it into a continuous process, so to say. And then the second thing, the third aspect was all about implementation. How will these things that might or will be decided on UN level, signed by the member states, how will that be implemented at a later point? So with that, I would like to open the floor for first quick questions or reactions. We have roughly 5 minutes, so it would be nice if we could have at least...
We'll take 2 questions?
Yeah, maybe
two
we start with 2,
questions.
yeah.
Great. Max?
Yeah, I mean, as someone from Senegal, I have to echo what happened. Sorry about that. We'll make it happen. Morocco will advance. But I will add one fear, okay? As we are talking about technology and Africa, and as someone from academia, I see capacity. So, I mean, in our group, we talked about developing the technology we need. Are we developing the technology we need? But for that, we have to know how to do it. So who will help? Who will fund the capacity and how? How do we make sure that in the continent we have the people to develop the technology the way it should be?
Thank you very much. We have a second voice over there. Max, yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you. My name is Mwende Njiraini from Diplo Foundation. We are starting off the African office based in Nairobi. He's just asked about capacity. Nena is our alumni and many other people in the room. Because what happens is that when you start being engaged, for example, in UN processes, at the ITU, at WISIS. So Nena and myself started with WISIS. And you go there either as a government official and have never heard about a technology like IPv6, and you're expected to give a statement or participate or give a line in the resolutions. So what we are keen in doing, and that's why as the Diplo Foundation, we're starting an office in Africa based in Nairobi, is to ensure that Africans have a say. We have just published a report, louder or strengthening African voices in digital diplomacy and digital policy. And the idea is that we build courses. The courses are online, and you can participate. You don't need to travel to any particular place. In addition to, we're looking at diplomats as well, ICT policymakers, regulators, civil society, etc. So that's when you're talking about capacity, there is an opportunity. Just one more thing about participation of Africans. As I said, we just published a report on how many Africans attend. Actually using AI, have done an analysis, for example, for the UN General Assembly that just happened, how many Africans were represented, and in the statement by your president, how many times was there a mention of digital or cyber? So that information is there. So we are encouraging meaningful participation of Africans in any UN agency or whichever organization or a private sector, etc. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And we have 1 minute left for a very concise statement, question, request, whatever it is. Anybody? Yes, over here. Who do we have here? Then? Okay, please.
Thank you. My question to Madame could be, how successful has working groups been before? And can those working groups could be based on territorial boundaries or domains help the Undersecretary General to implement some of the resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you. As this was a question, Anna, could you? Sorry. Would you like to? Please.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Nena, what happened to the Digital Solidarity Fund? And after talking in IGF for 17 years without making a decision, is it the best use of resources for so many people to be meeting every year and not come out with any decision? Maybe should we relook at the whole IGF as it was conceived in Tunis in 2005?
All right, thank you, Nina, for that passionate speech. So I'm Freddy Kodosi. I represent the Kwanza Technopolis Development Authority. So just one question here, and this is regard to one of your fears when you said that one of your fears is that such consultations might just be limited to international levels, such as this. And I think I agree with you 100%. We need to, like we always say, that African solutions will come from Africans themselves. So what will be with your experience, what will be your advice? I know here we are in Kenya, and I know there are majority of us here, some of us who are able to push some of these policy issues and agendas, even to our management and leaders up there. What will you advise countries to do so that such engagement continuously are more inclusive and so are more robust, particularly within countries?
So thank you very much. With these, we're slightly over time, but we can make it up later. Nana, if you would like to respond very quickly.
Asking questions and nobody's picking up their questions online. Online questions.
On the mirror board or on the streaming?
Yes, streaming.
On the streaming.
Yeah.
Okay. Did he communicate his question? Okay, we will check that in a moment. But thank you very much. Very, very, very valuable.
Okay. When I leave here, I'm going to connect to the online streaming, just in case I can help. But I'm on Twitter, I'm on WhatsApp. I'm happy to answer any questions as a follow-up. I will suggest that we target Global Digital Compact, hashtag Global Digital Compact on Twitter, because there are people at the Office of the UN Tech Envoy who can also respond. So if your question wasn't picked up online, my personal apologies, but I'm going to look it up now. But please use hashtag Global Digital Compact, now and in future. Thank you. The IGF, I get that question all the time. Conversations are very important because conversations lead to actions. So I don't think it's a bad use of resources, because there are also things that happen on the sidelines of IGF. And so I, for one, will vote for extending IGF. The Digital Solidarity Fund had an initial lifespan for 5 years as a trial, and then was to be reconducted if successful. After the first 5 years, it was not reconducted. Working groups are very key. They may be thematic or regional or even community-based. I am in one working group on internet fragmentation. It is a multi-stakeholder working group. What we have achieved with that group, even before our common agenda, was to issue letters, call attention to the General Assembly, and I strongly believe that it was through the work of that group that avoiding internet fragmentation came to be one of the sub-pillars of the Global Digital Compact. So I do believe that working groups are very efficient because they go straight to the point and give recommendations on principles and on actions, and I will encourage them. Youth is very important. Wendy and myself come from a long time, and Margaret here is also working on PRIDA. I teach internet governance, And it is very important that we all understand, because whether we are private sector or government or civil society, understanding how the internet works is very important. Otherwise, you are going to wake up and do some very stupid things. And we've done those stupid things in Africa, including shutting down the internet because someone might have insulted the president on a social media platform. So somebody stupid says something stupid on a social media platform, and because the wife of the president is angry, you shut down the internet. You shut down banking. You shut down people going to school. You shut down so many things because you don't understand how the internet works. You see what I mean? So we all need that capacity building. I keep learning. I'm going to school now on artificial intelligence. So if there isn't anything you can do, please increase your own knowledge, at least beginning with the 7 pillars of the Global Digital Compact. Understand how it works. I arrived here this morning. I was asked to give consent for my images, and I refused to give consent because I was supposed to have been informed at least 24 hours ahead of time that my images were going to be taken. You see? And I said, no, I'm not giving that consent. Not because my face is anything. I don't even know how to make up. But then I just wanted to give a message that when you want data from me, you ask me. And if you don't stand up for your own self, nobody will. And that is also my response to the question on development. I said it again. If an issue has gone to the UN, it means that at the national level, people are not willing or are tired or don't have the resources to do it. And so they're like, maybe the UN should work on it. People are developing their countries. I came from that tiny country called Qatar. They are moving on. People in the Middle East are moving on. And so we cannot be sitting here in Africa and be waiting and be writing a Mandip and saying, could you please help us? He's not a fundraiser for your national implementation plan. No, he won't do that. But he can take our voices. So my answer is, what do we have in Kenya? What do we have in Cote d'Ivoire? What do we have in Nigeria? And what can we make with it? And that is where national consultations and national IGFs take on strength. We agreed as a global community that the global IGF will not be a decision-making instance. But nothing prevents the Kenyan national IGF from taking its own decisions and implementing them. You see what I mean? So there's an autonomy at national level that can happen. And Kictanet, for those who don't know, I'm a member of Kictanet from the times of permanent secretary in Demo. Goodness, when I say these things, I feel old. But I'm saying that in Africa, we can cross-fertilize our expertise. I have contributed to many of your national ICT strategy, not because I'm a citizen of your country, but because this is what I believe in. So we have no issues cross-fertilizing ourselves for our tech development. But please, let's not think that help will come from somewhere. We have done that. It has not worked. Maybe we should change. On youth and ICT, let's not forget. I think we all said it here that Africa has great opportunities because we have the youth, we have mobile, we have engagement, we are training ourselves. I also believe that. I believe that our future is bright. M-Pesa in Kenya was not the first idea of mobile money in Africa. You can quote me. But Kenyan government was the first government that told Safari Telecom, let's try it. Let us not be afraid of 5G, of AI, of metaverse, of new technologies. Let's try them within the framework of principles. If they don't work, we will try again. Once again, Kenya M-Pesa was not the first mobile money idea in Africa, but Kenya government was the first government that was open enough to say, let's give it a try. let's give GDC a try. Thank you.
Thank you. To Rim Jaro, please,
Thank
the
you.
floor is yours.
Thank you so much. So I have a presentation, and I don't know which laptop we will be using for the presentation. So as it's there, so my name is Rim Jaro, and I am Tunisian. I was working for the Tunisian government on how to develop on a program called Smart Tunisia, and then moved to Smart Africa. And it was mainly on how to develop digital business and job creation and skills development in the digital sector in Tunisia. And then I was involved in the Startup Act development and Startup Tunisia development program, and then now I'm at Smart Africa, representing, leading the initiatives on entrepreneurship and digital-driven entrepreneurship. I'm happy to be here today. Thank you all for inviting us and for giving us the opportunity to present what is Smart Africa, what we are doing. We will have a more global perspective for this presentation on the work we are doing and how it will, or how we intend to help the acceleration and fostering digital transformation on the continent. So Smart Africa, so first the opportunity of digital in Africa, and this is not to demonstrate anymore. The economy, the internet economy will reach 180 billion, but there is also a young population, an entrepreneurship population, 700K digital skills, a growth, an economic growth, but also a huge market and a fast-growing huge market on the continent. So digital transformation and accelerating digital transformation will help us benefit and uptake those opportunities. There are some challenges we are facing. Next slide, please, or I can just slide. Thank you. We are over 50 countries, meaning over 50 markets, over 50 regulations, over 50 levels of development, of maturity of the ecosystems. And then when someone is considering the African market, even if it is digital, a digital investor, he needs to deal with over 50 regulations. And the market opportunity of 1.3 billion population is not necessarily present, except for some markets like Nigeria, Kenya, Uganda, but not necessarily for smaller countries like mine, where we are 11 million people. A limited cross-border exchange, either it is in terms of commerce, of trade, of infrastructure, data exchange, and so on. And it is also, we can also link it again to the over 50 frameworks we are dealing with on the African continent. So what is the vision of Smart Africa? Our vision at Smart Africa is to build, create, arrive to this single digital market by 2030. What is a single digital market for Smart Africa? We need to take it from a bigger or a more global perspective. It's not necessarily linked only to trade, but it's creating this digital, a common digital area where we can exchange data, where we have harmonized policies, and where it is legible and intelligible for each other countries, the framework we are working on. And so we can just make concrete this opportunity of the 1.3 billion market on the continent. How we do this? We have the Smart Africa Manifesto. It was launched on 2013 on the first Transform Africa Summit, led by 7 heads of states, chaired by His Excellency Paul Kagame. And when you see the 5 principles of the manifesto, you will find that we are trying to cover the global aspect of digital transformation, but also trying to involve all the relevant stakeholders in this endeavor. So first is policies and the political sponsorship and the political buy-in of ICT and putting ICT in the heart and as a priority for the economic and social transformation on a national level and continental level, improve the access in terms of infrastructure, but also in terms of capacity and in terms of skills and digital literacy to be able to use this access to infrastructure and opportunities. Also governance, accountability, efficiency, but also put the private sector first. Private sector in the digital sector is one of the most important, alongside with civil society and multilateral partners, is one of the most important partners that could support this transformation and the development of this single digital market, and then ICT to promote the sustainable development on the continent. This manifesto was endorsed by the AU General Assembly in 2014. So, Smart Africa is an alliance of 35 countries first. We moved from the 7 countries in 2013, and now in 2022 we are 35 countries, including, I think, most of the countries that are present here. Our last member joining is Nigeria. So it's member states, it's representing 1.1 billion Africans, but it's also other partners. It's not only member states, and this is how Smart Africa is built and how we see ourselves working is first our member states, but also, next slide please, our other members and organizations that are members of Smart Africa, that are involved in the governance and decision making at Smart Africa, and that are involved in the implementation of the projects of Smart Africa. So we have many partners from the private sector, the development partners. I think they are missing here, apologies. But also we do have academia and organizations, NGOs and organizations on the continent. So how the governance of Smart Africa is organized? We have our decision-making organs. The board, with the heads of states chaired by His Excellency Paul Kagame, but also private sector is sitting on the board of Smart Africa and taking decisions on what we are doing, on our activities and implementation. The steering committee co-chaired by ITU and AU, and also with ministers of ICT, international organizations, and private sector members of Smart Africa. And then we have a consultative, we have like forums for each kind or each type of partner where they can exchange and then bring ideas and decisions to be discussed in the governing and in the decision-making organs. And the secretariat, where I belong, is the implementation organ and executive organ of Smart Africa. So we have the regulators, the ministers, the private sector, and also ICT development agencies. So again, pillars we are working on based on our vision and our manifesto is first, affordable digital infrastructure. The second is facilitating business and job creation. And the third is accelerate the birth and development of digital society through capacity building for the usage, but also for the creation of these public services. These are our achievements so far for the first strategic exercise of Smart Africa. It started from 2020 to 2022. We are closing it today. We are now having a portfolio of 34 projects and 22 at implementation and scale-up level. So how do we work at Smart Africa? Our work is we as a secretariat, so we define first the priorities with member states. what are the priorities, our common priorities as an alliance and as a continent for the development of digital transformation and the economic development through digital transformation in Africa. And then we do have our flagship projects, and each country is leading a flagship project for the continent, and the other countries are involved in the implementation and in benefiting from these flagship projects. For example, Rwanda is leading the flagship project on smart cities, and it supported 7 other countries to develop their national smart city strategies and in implementing pilot projects. For example, Tunisia is leading on entrepreneurship and startups, and then we are involving other countries in the development of the toolkit, also the other organizations that are here that were involved in our projects. So this is how we work at Smart Africa, and these are our achievements so far until 2022. Now, for the next strategic exercises starting, yeah, you can move. For the next strategic exercise that is starting on 2023 and moving forward to 2025, and we are still in this process of working on those 3 pillars. It's access, harmonization, and enabling the environment, and then having and then transforming it. Also connect, innovate, and transform. We have 3 major programs. So the vision is to drive Africa's digital transformation agenda through bold and innovative multi-stakeholder approach. The strategic objectives still resilient, sustainable, but also inclusive infrastructure, agile and policy and regulatory harmonization, and then leverage technology to accelerate inclusive uptake of digital public goods and services. For this, we have 3 main programs we are working on: sustainable inclusive infrastructure, empowerment and capacity building, and it includes capacity building, trainings, but also gender empowerment, regional empowerment, the list. So I'm losing my English, sorry. And then for the third one is digital transformation services and services acceleration. Our main focus is cross-border projects that will involve and benefit from many countries, but we do also have this very important part of our work as Smart Africa, which is support to the countries. It's in countries support, and this is why we have this Smart Africa digital acceleration program for member states to support them in their on the national level for their digital transformation programs. Maybe here it's just details on programs and on the projects under each program. And yes, you can have those details in the presentation, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Rim, for your presentation of what you're doing at Smart Africa. Now we have time maybe for some quick reactions or questions, roughly 5 minutes. Are there any comments, questions, need for clarification? Yeah, over here. Please, sir.
Thank you. So number one is a concern. Are you going to share with us that presentation? I think this goes to all presenters. We'll be so happy to have those presentations. So that we can even do follow-up questions via emails or through our platform. I think we have already a drive where we can still continuously engage. My question to you is, this is a very good thing that I think you are doing as Smart Africa, right? Yes. Now, and my question is in regard to connectivity, and particularly the cross-border program that you have mentioned. currently in the country, we have a number of projects that are geared toward creating connectivity or establishing connectivity to our population. We have the county connectivity, we have the North B, National Fiber Optic Infrastructure backbone. We now have the digital superhighway, which aims at actually laying down 1,000 kilometers of fiber to the entire country, basically connecting to the last mile and then using the private sector muscles to connect to homes. How do you link up or leverage on such programs in each country so that you are in tandem? Because I wanted to understand the role of Smart Africa, particularly in regard to the project that we are doing in Kenya, which is in line with what you are doing. Thank you.
We have a question over here, and while Max is getting there,
Thank you. Do you prefer French or English? Okay. Oh, no.
hopefully, no, it does not work. That's fine.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to understand better two things. One is the Smart Africa Alliance operating under the aegis of another multilateral organization? C'est une partie de oui, oui, comme le EU ou autre comme ça. Et l'autre partie est que s'il y a un projet spécifique que nous pouvons discuter, juste pour mieux comprendre ça que vous faites, parce qu'il semble qu'il y a beaucoup de thèmes que vous avez montrés là, mais je ne comprends pas peut-être le type de projet spécifique, ou c'est politique sur la politique, ou c'est implémentation, tout ça. Merci. Moi? Moi-même. je me repose. Oui.
So it's asking about specific examples. That is what I understood. And how exactly? The other, exactly. Yeah. Thank you. And question over here, Max, could you?
I did. Thank you very much. I think I've introduced myself. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. It was a good one for people who don't know Smart Africa, but I do, and that's a problem. Because the first time I heard about Smart Africa, and by the way, Lassina is my countryman from Côte d'Ivoire. My idea, my dream at that time, was that Smart Africa will be the digital equivalent of the African Union. And so as a digital citizen, I had great hopes. Is that still the dream? One thing, someone is asking one specific thing. There was the one network, One African Network, where I, as a holder of a Nigerian passport, could digitally roam. That is, with my Côte d'Ivoire number, I could roam the continent. We started with East Africa at some point. I think in West Africa something has started. So that specific project, I'm interested in it because I've been invited by the AU back here in Nairobi for the Africa Free Trade whatever. So we have the AU of presidents in Addis Ababa. We have the AU of free trade that is coming up, fingers crossed. We have what I believe is a digital AU in the Smart Africa. Why can't we digitally roam? That's just the question. It's the same with visa. I won't ask you the visa question. It is the same with transport. I won't ask you the transport, but at least roaming on my number. Where are we at it? Why can't I be a free African digital citizen on my mobile number? Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Nana. We have interventions.
Those are working. it's a quick question, and I think in the light of what Ms. Nena just said, taking Smart Africa as a one single digital market, you said to reach this goal by 2030, like in light of the SGDs. And Smart Africa, in the way they operate, in terms of defining strategy for each country, how specific you guys are engagement in terms with each government, each country? Do you have a benchmark or you yearly report for each country and see where they are at in terms of reaching those goals?
So thank you all for your questions. So coming to the question on digital infrastructure. So what we are trying to do at Smart Africa, and you will excuse me, I'm not the one who is in the very small details of what we are doing in infrastructure, but what we are trying to do is to first support countries with their own digital infrastructure development, but also and mostly trying to support the connection, the interconnectivity between the countries. And the Africa Backbone project that is there is how to make that each country that is supported through this project will be connected at least to two of its neighbors. So it will mean that we need to develop the infrastructure until those neighbors and then connect. And then work with the three countries at least in terms of developing this connectivity projects. Now coming to you, French or English? Okay. French? Okay, either. So Smart Africa Manifesto was endorsed by African Union. And African Union is one of our major partners, and they are co-chairing Smart Africa Steering Committee, meaning that they have a decision on what we are doing, implementing, and we are what we are doing and what we are implementing within our scope. We are not like but we have a very close coordination, relationship, and cooperation with the African Union. It is very key. Now implementing the projects, so we have various kinds of implementations. So it can go from blueprints for the country, for the continent, the in-country strategies, supporting policies, and so on, but also implementing concrete digital projects in the countries. So for example, in Rwanda, we implemented smart cities project as concrete projects, the smart waste management, the command and control center. So it goes from that range, from policies for the continent and blueprints for the continent to concrete implementing projects, in countries, okay? Now for Madame Nena, the dream is still there. The dream is still there. So maybe it's taking more time, but the dream is still there, and the One African Network is one of the first projects Smart Africa started with, but it is still ongoing with a lot of work, regulatory work in countries to build this One African Network. Now I think it's only Monsieur Mebeti question. So if you can, if I recall well, it's the link between what we are doing at Smart Africa and the specific support, in-country support on strategies and so on. So I will take the example of what I am doing at Smart Africa, at least on the policy side of it. So when talking about entrepreneurship and startups, Africa is one of the most entrepreneurs continents. And Tunisia started it, but there are many Tunisia started with the Startup Act and having a specific startups policy, and Tunisia is championing. We had they supported or they led the work for the development of the blueprint for the continent. But we still have various countries with various maturity ecosystems, but also with various views on how to implement an entrepreneurship or startups policy. There are countries that went for startup acts, but there are other countries that are mature enough and they are not necessarily in the vision of having a startup specific something. And there are very mature ecosystems, for example, Egypt or Morocco. They're not considering startup acts, but they do have policies that are specific to SMEs. So at Smart Africa, what we've done after this blueprint is that we gathered together all the relevant people on the continent to develop a kind of toolkit, policy toolkit for startups. Meaning, whatever maturity level you have, whatever vision you have on your policies on startups, and whatever the stage you are starting on, you do have like a roadmap on how to continue to develop your ecosystem. Starting from consultation, knowing and assessing your ecosystem, to designing the policy, and not necessarily a startup act, designing a policy, to implementing and enacting and implementing your policy, to monitoring, evaluation, and then reviewing the policy. So this is what we try to do, is to have those continental tools in terms of policies and strategies, to have these continental tools and to support contextualizing them nationally through those toolkits or through, for example, national strategies like we've done for in terms of smart cities, and now coming to the data privacy and guidelines. So this is how it's linked from Smart Africa, from the alliance level to the continent level. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Doreen. Am I presenting from that screen?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Just from the very beginning.
Okay.
All right. Thanks again for having me today. It's a pleasure to be a part of the GDC consultations with discussions on how to shape an open, inclusive, free, and secure digital future. I won't introduce myself again. I think Doreen did a good job about that. So I'll start off with a very brief historic background into the origins of the organization that I work for as executive director, which is Ushahidi. Ushahidi is a Swahili word that means testimony. We are a company that was born out of the post-election violence that broke out in Kenya back in 2007, 2008. I believe many of you in the room here know of that story, but I'll just go over it. The problem then was that a lot of what was happening on the ground was largely underreported or not reported at all. And so a group of 5 Kenyan bloggers who are the Ushahidi founders came together to basically help Kenyans shed light on what was happening around them. And they built a platform where people could send in text messages or fill out a web form and have that information aggregated on a map. So what you're seeing on the screen right now is actually a snapshot of the very first instance of the Ushahidi platform. And what this did was essentially give Kenyans a voice when no one else could or would. Citizen witnesses became empowered to document violence in their communities, share this information globally, and where possible, even feed this data to domestic and international investigators and prosecutors working towards accountability for crimes. Next slide. So who are we? We are a global nonprofit technology company with roots here in Kenya that develop integrated tools and services that enable ordinary citizens and marginalized groups to generate solutions to mobilize the communities for good. And we do this by building open source software that strengthens communities to improve their lives, empowering them to rapidly and purposefully gather information about different issues that are affecting them, enabling people to analyze, respond, and act on that information. Now, our work is primarily focused on 3 impact areas. One of the main ones is humanitarian and disaster relief. Second, human rights protection and good governance, but we're not limited to just those impact areas. And the ultimate goal that we are chasing is systemic change in the quest for justice. What we want is for citizens to feel included, for organizations to be much more effective, and for policies and decisions that are being made to be inclusive and representative of the needs of ordinary people. Now, that said, we recognize that as an organization, our strength really lies in providing technology and expertise that makes it easy for mission-aligned organizations to then go and collect data from respondents on the ground and use that data to create the impact that they want to see in the world. Now, I tend to use this illustration at the end of my presentations, but I feel like it would make more sense to use it as at the start, to describe what my vision for an inclusive digital future would look like. Digital platforms like Ushahidi are like fertile land because they represent the potential for greater participation, improved decision-making, as well as trust. And the data and information that we gather from people who are affected by different issues on these platforms are like having good seeds. Seeds that hold promise to flourish and yield good produce if it's properly and appropriately handled. But without farmers to till the land, your fertile land and seeds are practically useless. The farm will not flourish without the people who are going in and putting in the work to get produce out of that land. And so it is in this context that I bring out this thought that ordinary citizens better understand the issues that they're dealing with and that they must be included as a part of the solution to the issues that they're going through. They know the context, they know the tensions, and so for any effective solutions, even as we have these conversations in the room today about shaping the digital future of Africa, we have to make sure that these solutions are tapping into the collective intelligence and wisdom of the people that we're trying to reach, even though some of them might be termed as too simple or not educated in the conventional sense. In this information age, ordinary citizens cannot be considered passive recipients of information anymore, but have to be included as active participants. Next slide. Now, technology can serve as a very good way of facilitating this kind of engagement with the groups that I'm talking about. And that can only happen by meeting these audiences where they are. For us at Ushahidi, we've been very intentional about fostering inclusiveness in how we build and design our tools, because our goal is to empower communities to thrive as a result of access to data and technology. And this is how we've gone about this goal. First and foremost, our platform is free and open source, which means we are reducing the burden of cost and making the platform accessible to everyone, regardless of the financial ability. Second is that we innovate around the tools that people already have access to, which is the mobile phone. Whether it is my grandmother in the village who might have an internet-enabled phone or have one that doesn't have access to internet, or for many of us in the room here who have smartphone apps, smartphones and laptops. Third, we also make the platform available in multiple languages, allowing people to interact with data in the languages that they're familiar with. I think one of the things as technologists that we tend to forget about is the fact that English is widely used around the world, but it is not the first language for many people around the world. And if we're really looking towards being inclusive, then we have to make sure that people can interact with the tools in languages that they are familiar with. Now, these are all decisions that we made with our users in mind, and we believe that these decisions have led to wide-scale use of the platform. This is a tool that is born out of problems that we always tend to associate with Africa, be it low bandwidth or bad governance, and that has ended up being used in more than 160 countries in the last 14 years, more than 200,000 times, by a team that is primarily based here in Kenya. Next slide. Since inception, this platform has been used to gather over 50 million citizen reports that have been used to advance democracy, report incidences, mobilize crisis response, simplify research, encourage activism, influence change, and improve society to some extent. Now, what's catalyzed such exponential growth in platforms like these over the years? I think my answer is best explained by what you're seeing on the screen here, which is the pothole theory, that it takes an action that directly affects you to make you go over and beyond to act. News about a pothole getting fixed right outside this hotel today will probably be of interest to you if you're moving around versus news about a pothole getting fixed 10,000 miles away. And it just goes to underscore the point that I made before, that right now, with everything that's going on in the world and with the information landscape changing, where we're really seeing a much bigger push for there being a bottom-up approach to information sharing. We're seeing citizens becoming actively involved in sharing their opinions and looking for their voices to be heard. I think even right now with COVID-19, one of the things that has become abundantly clear to all of us is that it is going to take collective responsibility for us to really get out of this crisis. And I believe that the same applies when designing the digital future that we want to see in the world. So in the next few minutes, I wanted to share a few practical examples of how our platform has been used to advance the SDGs in one way or the other. This actually tends to be one of my favorite examples, despite the topic that we're talking about. So a group of activists in Egypt back in 2010 set up an instance of the Ushahidi platform to collect information about sexual harassment against women. And initially when they started, the goal was to create awareness about the issue. But as time went by, it really did shift the conversation. It was no longer about whether this was happening or not, but what kind of behavioral change needs to be seen in those communities and how this information can be used to effect that. And beyond that, they also ended up creating a model that ended up being replicated in more than 20 other countries. There are more than 20 other different harass maps out there where people are using that information to create awareness, but then also drive a lot of community-based interventions to influence a shift in mindset when it comes to sexual harassment. My second example is one that hits very close to home, given the fact that we are a company that was born out of elections. Of course, elections we hold that very dear to our hearts. And so for every election since 2008, we have deployed an instance of the Ushahidi platform to empower ordinary citizens to actively protect their vote, but then also ensure a free and fair outcome. And this, the strategy around this has been one that is less reactionary and more proactive and preventative, really looking at ordinary citizens as a source of information around what's going on, and then being able to highlight that and forward that over for response. I believe the plan is for a group called Connected Development in Nigeria to also use a platform to engage citizens in the Nigerian elections in February. Second last. One of the most pressing challenges that the world is facing today is climate change. And I'm sure many of you in the room can also attest to the fact that there's a lot of climate data out there, but there still seems to be a missing piece, which is the voice of the people who are being affected by climate change, and especially within the African context. We recently deployed our software in Tana River in partnership with World Vision and GSMA. To map citizen voices on their lived experience of climate change, particularly on indicators of energy and reduction of footprints. And it is a hope that that information will be fed over to local authorities to influence whatever interventions they want to run around that. To wrap up, I think the main, if there's one thing you can take out of my long presentation today, it is the fact that ordinary citizens have to be at the heart of any solution that is being developed. So even as we sit in this room today and talk about shaping the future shaping the digital future of Africa, let's also think about practical ways of engaging with people who are not in this room and leverage technology to be able to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Angela, for that powerful presentation and also getting to know that this particular platform is being used by people from around the continent. And so we're going to take some questions. I'm sure we have some questions. Yes, we have one here. Great.
I don't believe if mine is a question. It's just to congratulate the presentation.
Okay.
This is a great product. I'm in love with it. So you said it's a free and open source. How do a country, I mean, a startup in any other country can actually make this an application? I'm currently on your website, but I don't have time to look at it. But I think seriously, you did a good job.
If I got the question right, how do other countries
or companies or stakeholders in any way can
tap
use
into
this
it?
and adapt it,
Great.
so to say, for their use? Yeah. Other questions or comments? Yes, over here.
Yeah, my name is Vincent Kumwenda from the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, embedded in the Presidential Delivery Unit in Malawi. I must confess that we've used Ushahidi for elections in Malawi 2014 and 2019. It's a great tool. We've built on top of it a number of times. My question is, how can we bring in more private sector players who are developing software? I think to open up a lot more, I think, as an example in terms of open source softwares like these, that at the end of the day, they are very great in terms of citizen participation, but we need more private sector participation. I don't know if at Ushahidi there is a formula or a plan or any advice that you can give that we engage more private sector players to come out with open source systems. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions?
One more
Okay.
here, please.
Thank you for the very interesting presentation. My concern is how many languages there are inside you are used with Ushahidi, because in my countries we have more than 200 languages. It's possible that we translate to the Ushahidis to a very huge number of languages. And the other concern is, as the Ushahidi is open source, can it be open to other countries too? In other hand, can we have the code source of this platform so that we can use it to our countries? Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
All right.
Then
Any others? No.
we give back.
So here we go. Thank you. So I'll answer the very first question. It'll also answer yours. So there's two ways that people who want to use a platform can set it up. You can either download the software and take the source code and host it on your own servers and customize it to fit your needs, or you can make use of our hosted service. So on ushahidi.com, all you need is an email address, and you'll be able to set up an instance, name it, put a custom URL, and then we will host the data for you. So to answer your question on how best the platform can be used in other countries, as I said before, it actually is being used in multiple other countries. Right now, there's a team in Iran that is using it to document the protests following Masa Amin's death. There's, people used it in Brazil. It's been used for the Zambian election. So it is freely available. You just need to go to either our website or the GitHub page, download. You can customize the source code to whatever extent that you require. But of course, it is under a AGPL license. So if there are any improvements that could possibly benefit the rest of the core, you are also free to share that back. Right.
And about the languages?
Oh, and then about the languages, how many languages? I think currently it's available in about 46 different languages. I would need to confirm the level of completeness for many of them. I know we have probably about 30 that are at 100%. But because of it being open source, we do open it up for community members to come in and add new languages and translate. So for example, for us here in Kenya, we know that there's over 40 different tribes. As it stands now, it's only available in Swahili
as a national language, but in case somebody did need to use it, you can add in the local language and work with a partner or with the local community to then translate this, translate the strings of the software. So you're not locked out as far as that. And then second question was how we can bring in more private sector participation to come out with open source systems. Where are the private sector people in the room? I had someone from Google. So I think I'd looked at this from a very different perspective and looking at it specifically from an issue-based perspective. Looking at what the value of having these kinds of partnerships would have. And the one example that comes to mind for me is COVID-19, how you have civil society probably working with private sector and working with governments as well. This idea of public-private data exchanges trying to lead towards a very specific goal. In as far as the value of getting more, private sector coming out with open source systems, I think I would first of all challenge those of us who have, rather people who make use of tech platforms, to widen our perspective on the number of open source projects that are out there. There are several alternatives. I think this is where the Digital Public Goods Registry also comes in, that there are a bevy of solutions that already exist out there, and it would just be a matter of then trying to pair up with private sector and seeing what value that can be provided in terms of skill sets or improving in terms of security. Yeah, that would be it.
Please, the floor is yours.
Time now. Good afternoon, everybody. Ça va? Wait. I don't speak any, actually I do, but that's another story. I just wanted to take a couple of minutes as we get into the breakout sessions to help us just kind of refocus our energies a little bit more. I know some of the people in this room, know me. My name is Nanjala. I do very many things. I'm in this room in my capacity as a member of the UN High-Level Advisory Board on Effective Multilateralism. And one of the things that we are thinking about in our meetings and our conversations with the Tech Envoy is really the future of the internet and the future of the digital age. And I think sometimes when we get stuck in conference mode, because many of us here have just come from IGF, people have gone to other conferences, we've been at the Stockholm Internet Forum, we've been in all these internet conferences, it's so easy to get stuck in a certain wavelength and a certain gear, and that we think that we have to sort of retread the same conversations and the discourses again. But I think it's important for us to remember that this is a really unique opportunity that we have here. We are feeding into a process that is going to determine our shared digital future. And in a moment of tremendous transformation, of which Africa is at the center, there are contesting visions for our shared digital future that are moving around the world right now. And we have to articulate a vision that makes sense for us so that we're not just people for whom policy is done to, but that we're actually people who are shaping policy, who are feeding into policy, who are telling the stories that need to be told in order to make sure that Africa is present at the table, not just as a source or resources, but as a participant. So I just really wanted to invite us all to think very critically about this very simple question. What do you want our shared digital future to look like? What are the problems that you're seeing? What are the opportunities that you're seeing? What are some of the crises that you're responding to? What are some of the tools that you have? What are some of the tools that you're missing? I think with those 5 questions and really trying to think about it outside our institutional silos, outside our national silos, we can really fit into this process because, as I said, and I think people in this room will tell you, we are really in a moment of tremendous transformation. This is really one of those generational moments of transformation, and I think it would be a missed opportunity for us to have conversations that we could be having elsewhere when we have an opportunity to feed into something so crucial. So that is my 60 seconds. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon. Hello. Hi, so my name is Sarah Wesonga. I'm from Article 19, East Africa. And I will be representing Group 3, which is Group 1 on the Miro board. Somehow we found someone else had taken our space.
So on the first question on where are we standing with regards to SDGs globally in Africa, we had very diverse inputs from various countries, including Kenya, Zambia, Malawi, Nigeria, Cameroon. And the truth is we had very varied responses with regards to progress on SDGs. The SDGs that were mentioned quite often were the ones targeting people, so think of education, gender, women and the rest. So in the case of Nigeria, they've seen the performance on SDG 3 and 4 over time has been deprioritized because the implementation is still lacking. In Zambia, on Goal 4, the implementation of free education under the new administration has really advanced this goal. In Kenya, Goal 17 on partnerships has been quite exemplary with multi-stakeholder across the board, looking at how digital inclusion has been progressive. But I think generally across the group, or rather the team, was the fact that human rights is still not at the center, or rather at the core of deploying these digital technologies. A very controversial sort of has been granted to me. How did the use of digital technologies, how has it already contributed to addressing various issues, and how can this contribute even further? We cite the case of Rwanda, where the use of digital technology in enhancing service delivery for citizens has been enhancing service delivery. There's issues around using digital identities in the center of service delivery or citizen service delivery, because we saw that this sort of excludes a lot of populations. And also ensuring human rights impact assessment is done anytime that we are considering excludes various populations. So ensuring that this is addressed. Yes. On which contribution is necessary from each stakeholder to make digital technologies a strong driver for the 2030 agenda. I think one of the key issues was we need to invest in the safety and protection of digital infrastructure to ensure they're sustainable. The whole thing about deploying expensive technologies that do not last or are affected by rain or whatever should be for countries to adopt and implement these technologies, so that we are not just signing off to things that we do not have the capacity to implement. For our key messages, we had 5 key messages, and the first one was very strong to say that Africa is not just a market. We need to respect the agency, the input, and the contribution of the continent in this talk. The next one is meaningful inclusivity of any and all populations. Women, children, persons with disabilities, marginalized communities, and indigenous populations need to be at the center of this. And we also said, make sure human rights are at the core of all digital technology services. The fourth one is make digital technologies affordable, accessible, and good quality. Make sure it's not elitist. And lastly, thank you for that, is to make sure the digital environment is safe and secure for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Access to information also is helping to avoid, for example, deterioration of the products. In health, drone to supply blood in Rwanda with Zipline, AI to assist the doctor make better decision, and connectivity also help do intervention in remote area. So that has been something we have seen in the continent, and better participation from the people. Okay, now that people have access to technology in general, you have more voice. For example, women that get abused, for example, can voice themselves while before they were not able to do so. So let me move to the next one. So how did the use of digital technology is contributing? So people having, for example, access to pay taxes, and with the use of digital, government has better visibility. And the ease of access is encouraging people to pay, and government has better visibility. That means that more money in the pocket of the government, if they use it in a good way,
There's
it
more
is helpful.
transparency, so to say, more transparency.
Exactly, yes, yeah. Okay. More of efficiency in the processes we have seen. So, and this, I wrote it in French, but I mentioned it. I mean, the human dignity. This is talking about the visa, and I mean beyond the visa, and also more connection to your family. So the notion of family, the bonds to the family is now stronger because of this. We have included more people with disabilities today. I mean, and you don't need to show your disability, or people don't need to know about it. What else? The data is helping in the decision making. We talked about Rwanda, for example, with CDOs. Access to knowledge now is easier because of some MOOCs and all the online trainings that we have. So the last one, we have a number of them here. What needs to be improved? A lot, okay? Remove barriers at all levels. So we need a better harmonization in the continent. We have to build the capacity. We need to be able to build the technology we use, and not the technology that was brought to us. So that was mentioned. Countries should share best practices, and the AU should help actually enforce that. The gender agenda needs to be more intentional, okay? Better intention in the to include more women and give them not just education but effective education. We'll talk about it in the recommendations. It looks like digital. We talk about it, but it does not seem to be the #1 priority for many of the governments. Where is the 5? I want to see where it is. I'm not going to, okay? Yeah, it was not turned on, so I have then 10 minutes now.
Let's give you one more minute.
Okay, then let me go to the recommendations. Okay? So one thing that was, I mean, agreed is that we consider numbers when we assess impact. And the message is that we should go beyond the numbers, especially when we talk about women education. This many women or kids, I mean, young girls went to school is not enough. We have to make sure that they finish school and they get access to, high-level jobs. Okay, so the development of local expertise. This has been mentioned so many times. We need to know how to build these things in software and in hardware as well. So the industry of hardware has to be developed in the continent. We have to have better digital infrastructure. Still today, connectivity is missing in rural areas. We need to be working on that to give to those people actually the opportunity to reap whatever benefit we have with digital. And then we have to have a better understanding of the notion of digital right and digital privacy. I don't know if anybody here has a definition for that. We need to understand it, and we need to have regulation along those lines, and not just regulation implementation, making sure that we enforce those regulations. That's what we had in group number 1. Did I go over time?
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much. A round of applause for him. Anyone think maybe there's something you're disputing on his presentation? All right, group 2. Group 2. Oh, are we having a duo? Oh, a trio. Oh, okay, all right. Does this mean you want 15 minutes, or you just want the same 5, right? The same 5. All right. Okay. I'm gonna add one minute for fixing the HDMI. No. Okay. Okay. All right. Key messages we can divide that between each other.
no, it's again the cable. It's not. Can we?
Hold on.
Max, are you here anywhere? No. Vivian, yeah. Can you? She will. So we'll probably quickly change the cable. It's Max and Vivian. Could we bring a cable, a working cable, HDMI cable from the other room? I think this is not. It's a bit too shaky. Let's try again. If it works. Yeah, let us try one last time and then. Now, okay, great, thanks. But it's good to have it here. Do you get along? It's too. You can use the mouse if you want to. It's connected. Should be. Yeah. And then with the mouse wheel you can zoom in.
I use there.
Here's
Okay.
the timer now. Okay. Or we can put it here.
That's a scary timer.
Yes.
All right. So this wonderful duo here will be recapping what we discussed in Group 2. In terms of where we stand regarding the SDGs globally and in Africa, I think there was resounding kind of everybody tended to agree that we are not on track from the perspective of very key pillars. There was an ongoing discussion around how those are also relevant to us within the African context, and especially when it comes to how projects are being designed and whether they're actually taking into account the context of the people who are being affected. There were some points around corruption also being a problem and really contributing to us not being able to progress, and the lack of inclusion of different stakeholders, even as we think about how we're designing the programs and the projects and how to lead to continuity around them. There's also a point around the fact that COVID-19 really exposed the realities on the ground and further exacerbated existing inequalities. So that was a key point to keep in mind. Trying to copy and paste interventions from different places. I think the example that was given was many African countries copying and pasting the GDPR laws while not understanding the fact that it will not necessarily work very well within the African context, or even consideration of the kinds of people who are affected by digital interventions, whether that's persons with disabilities, and general lack of meaningful consultations. But there's also a counterpoint, thinking about the fact that we shouldn't only be looking at this from a point of gloom and doom. The fact that we have the SDGs as a globally understood goal and that everybody really understands them and can communicate them clearly is something that is worth acknowledging, and that we should really focus more on how we can move towards implementation. So key point there is take our wins, don't focus on the losses. Right. And then here my group members will help me. How did the use of digital technologies already contribute to addressing the issues, and how can it contribute even further? Key point there, of course, it's really facilitated participation and inclusion through use of online tools. For example, the UN SDGs Envoy on Technology surveys to give feedback on this particular forum. There are a lot of government digital platforms that are enhancing transparency in procurement of payments. I think the other side of digital tools include the fact that people are using digital lending platforms to drive access to finances. There's also been a lot of progress around research on renewable energy solutions such as solar, as well as their implementation. There are plenty of open data sources that are out there. Somebody give a shout out to Shahidi, thank you very much. And providing platforms where citizens can actually raise their voices and jump into conversations on matters that affect them. There are also tools being used to address specific challenges on very specific populations. I think, for example, awareness on children vaccination programs, amongst others. Because I'm afraid of this time, I'm going to hand over to my colleague.
Thank you. So thank you, Angela. So allow me to take you through the third question, and then I'll take you through the key messages. I'll be very brief. So the third question was, can I read it? Which contribution is necessary from each stakeholder to make digital technologies a strong drive for achieving the 2030 agenda? And a number of suggestions came along. Could we go down? So there's government is assembling different solutions and ensure access. So there has been a number of government initiatives that have come along. For example, the citizen platforms and all that are actually has ensured that people are able to access information that are necessary for service delivery. Then we have it needs governments to play their role in addressing the gaps in infrastructure. So basically here we're talking about the role of governments and the private sector. Where do the government end and where do the private sector takes over? So there was a need to ensure that government laid down the fundamentals in relation to access, connectivity, and digital literacy around, I think, issue around capacity building, and then the private sector coming along to take over. We have, I think I've addressed the cooperation, the private sector and public cooperation to address challenges. Then we also have the open data policy to facilitate innovation. So on this, we focus more on what are the policy guidelines and laws and acts that the governments can actually establish to promote innovation. Then we also looked at creating awareness on the need to actually build capacity, because when you want to bring in new systems or new technologies, you need to create awareness to your population. You need to build capacity, train them, for example, areas on digital skills, training, and the rest. So, and that also plays around upskilling as well. So they need also to harmonize interventions. So to avoid duplications of resources, all players need initiatives are harmonized so that we don't repeat things. So I'll just go directly to, to key messages quickly. So number one is people engagement is critical to ensure context-responsive solutions, inclusions of groups and youth women that addressing inclusion. Then we have government and private sector collaborate under the power of issues so that we have that collaborative approach on addressing issues so that we don't have gaps. Consideration of the African context and timeline as far as achievement of the SDGs is concerned, we agreed, and I think it was my group's opinion that 2030 was too short. We needed to be realistic and contextualize those goals as per the African context. Capacity building, I mentioned that, particularly when you want to, nothing works in African countries unless they are anchored on policies, laws, and therefore you have to go to the legislators in parliament to make sure that they are anchored. You need to, first of all, build capacity within parliament first. That when we talk about AI, artificial intelligence, then they know what that really means. Otherwise, you create an environment for corruption because of misunderstanding. They don't know what they are driving. Then we have technology has to be paired with enabling policy, again tying on that legislation. I mean, building capacity among legislators as well. Okay.
And maybe just to add to that last point, the key message there as well is that technology is not the silver bullet. It is just a part of the solution, so don't look at it as a holistic solution to everything.
A big thank you to this group and the three presenters. Thanks a lot.
Take it away.
Thank you, Doreen. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be part of this consultation this afternoon. I think my role is just to ground the conversation around internet fragmentation, and then as you go into your groups, you'll have more time to have deliberations and discuss on some of the measures and contextualize the issue further. The topic on internet fragmentation quite some time, but a lot of the discussion centered around the infrastructure itself. So looking at the technical layer of fragmentation. But now as there's more conversation around digital sovereignty as well as the global strive on control of the global internet platforms, we are seeing more conversations starting to happen at legislative and regulatory levels. And the reasoning, or what is given as a reason for fragmentation usually is named as protecting the end user, but we are seeing an increasingly endangering concept that threatens how the original concept of the internet is, which is an open, interconnected, and interoperable internet. Next slide, please. So I'll present two things. First is a draft framework from the policy network on internet fragmentation within the IGF framework. And then I'll share some principles that were from a coalition of civil society organizations as well as industry and individuals, proposing some of the core principles that should be looked at when we're looking at internet fragmentation. So the policy network on internet fragmentation is a multi-stakeholder coalition of civil society, business and technical community organizations. And the aim is to promote awareness of the technical, policy, legal and regulatory measures and actions that pose a risk to an open, interconnected, and interoperable internet. And the draft framework looks at fragmentations from three key areas. And the first is fragmentation of the user experience. And this results from users having a different experience, either from depending on where they have access to or not access from the internet. And with regards to this, it can be a result of either not having effective or affordable access. We see that quite a lot with unconnected or unconnected communities because of the lack of digital infrastructure. Interventions by states, increasingly blocking, shutdowns, and censorships are happening more and more often, or corporations, which can be content control or walled gardens. Then fragmentation of the internet technical layer is where it challenges the interoperability of the internet. And we've seen such discussions happening, especially around IPv4 and IPv6. And so this can be caused by interference within the public core of the internet, creation of national internets limited within geographical borders, or routing of the internet traffic via private infrastructure by big tech companies. Then lastly, manifestation is fragmentation of the internet governance and coordination, and this can manifest through a changing of the commitment from a human rights free flow data perspective. And so the stakeholders, the 28 stakeholders from industry, civil society organizations as well as individuals were brought together by the Global Partners Digital, and they issued a joint letter raising concerns about the human risks of internet fragmentation, as well as setting out some principles for an open, interconnected, and interoperable internet. And some of those principles were, first, an internet or principles that protect and promote human rights, promote the open, distributed, and interconnected nature of the internet, protect and promote the global free flow of information, advocate for efforts to address the root cause of internet fragmentation. Next slide. Sorry. The last one, sorry. Yeah. Sorry, the last slide. Yes, I went. Oh, no. Yes, that one, yes. Encourage cooperation to promote security and increase trust in the internet. Promote efforts to expand connectivity to the internet, and then commit to preserve and strengthen the multi-stakeholder internet. So there are very many different and diverse views of internet fragmentation. It's a topic that is, I think, beginning to pick up pace. And so the GDC presents as an opportunity for us to discuss, to debate, and agree on building norms and principles that can be able to unify the evolving internet governance. On a regional level, I think the consultations today that you're about to have in your different groups will give us an opportunity to look at how is internet fragmentation manifesting in the Africa context, and what are some of the measures that we need to take to ensure that we promote an open, interconnected, and interoperable internet. Thank you.
Perfectly in time. Thank you very much for that, which leaves us a couple of minutes to answer your questions or receive your comments, if you have any, but I assume so. Questions, comments, remarks? Anything that you would like to highlight? Yeah, go ahead, please.
Practical question. Who are the members of the working group? Is it state? Is it civil society primarily? The working group on internet fragmentation. Who's in the room?
So the PN on internet governance, public policy network. Yes, so that is open to everyone, I think all stakeholders who are within the IGF framework.
Thanks. There's another question.
I would like to know, I don't know if I can get my answer here, why internet is so expensive in Africa?
I think I'd like to defer that to the group discussions.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, thank you for a very great presentation. You're doing a good job. I just wanted to find out if there are any accountability structures that are put in place, because I think at the end of the day, all the 4 or 5 areas that are kind of fragmenting the internet, there are specific stakeholders that are involved at the end of the day, and your reports are able to find out whether it's states, companies, or other issues. I don't know if there's any accountability approach to this.
Currently, no, and I think that's why the discussions, either through the policy network or other coalitions that can come together, especially at national, regional levels, are important, because we do not have accountability frameworks, because also the views around fragmentations are very divergent, and right now even there's no common understanding on what it is and what it is not.
Thanks a lot. One more, yes?
Thank you, Delphine. One of those who drafted the letter you mentioned about, and we shared it. Also on the multi-stakeholder committee of the policy network on internet fragmentation. I'd wanted to let everyone know that internet fragmentation can happen at the national level. So while we work with the Office of the UN Tech Envoy to propose principles at the global level, there are also actions, policy actions at the national level that might fragment the internet. There are infrastructural issues, but there are also policy actions. I don't know, many Nigerians, of course, downloaded a VPN, and what they did was through the VPN, they will access Twitter anyhow. And what happens is that when you use a VPN to access a site, you take a pseudo server. And Nigerians took up servers in the US and in the UK. And what happened was that when the Nigerian government blocked Twitter, and Nigerians used VPN to access Twitter, then they went on Twitter to complain about the government. And when people woke up in the US, Nigeria was trending in the US and in the UK. And UK lawmakers and US lawmakers got interested about what was trending in their country, because Nigerians had kind of migrated, and there were letters calling on the government of Nigeria to look into that thing. So I'm saying that while we work, I'm in the working group. I have worked on with other stakeholders in that group. But let us look at our own national practices, policy practices that may give off that kind of deviant behavior from our citizens. And ultimately, I don't think Nigeria gained anything from that except the backlash of being an anti-democratic country. Joy, I had raised my hand when you said we were over time. I'm the one who talked about digital dignity that we get when we apply for visa online. Why are some African countries still not using e-visa? Are there any digital blockages, barriers, that will make any African country not to adopt e-visa? You see countries that don't have 10 embassies across the world asking you to fly your passport to XYZ. Why can't we adopt e-visas? Please. It's a question to all of us here. Thank you. And thank you, Kenya, for doing what you are doing already.
Thanks. Here I'm reporting again for the first group. I think that the aspect of our discussion that was remarkable here was we spend a lot of time trying to make sure that we have common understanding on many notions. When we talk about internet openness, what does it mean? Okay? A free internet, what does it mean? When we talk about digital rights and digital privacy, what does it mean? And we believe that it is important for this consultation to define, to make sure that all stakeholders have the same understanding on those notions. Otherwise, we'll go implement things that are different, thinking that we are doing the same thing. So we spend a lot of time discussing on those. So we try even to redefine the question in French. So let me go to the recommendations. I think that that's what we were asked to do. So the first one, of course, is have a better understanding of those notions and share them widely so that we go away with similar understanding. That's something that is key for us. Then we talked about making sure that we have an African voice on the table where decisions are made. And experience was talking there, saying that the inequalities that we have in the digital era are a reflection of the ones that we have in real life, okay? So maybe this is beyond just digital, but we need to make sure that we reinforce systematically the African voice on those tables. Then everything else was revolving around making sure that we have the knowledge, and we have the knowledge at all levels. So decision makers, the judges, the policemen, okay? the users, all of them. We have had many examples where a decision was made in court, but the person who was making the decision did not understand the implication of technology. And we know that in courts, people who do forensics, they come and they talk about what happened. So this education and capacity building is not just a technical one, but it is at all levels, from people who make decisions, people who write the laws, people who enforce the law, and people who use the technology, meaning the end users. We believe that that has to be done extensively in the continent so that we understand what we do, basically. So very quickly, that was the messages that we had in this group.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that prompt, fast delivery. Would now like to move on to our next group, group 2 or 3. Which one? Who of us is ready? Group 2? Group 2, yes. Group 2. Here you go. You can use this.
Here on this computer. Is it okay? Yeah. Is this? Yeah. Directly to the key
Thank you very much. Tendani from University of Cape Town, South Africa, will represent Group 2. So in our group, there was a deep sense of the fact that cybersecurity does threaten our digital rights and internet freedom. There was also a deep sense that the regulatory ambiguity also affects our online activities, and that there is a deep sense that the government needs to be much more proactive in trying to end up with, what did they call it in English? Infrastructure, regulation, but protecting individual rights. There needs to be cyber hygiene activities, sensitization or cybersecurity to protect vulnerable populations. And when we talked about this, we specifically reflected upon protecting our children online activities. There needs to be public participation, meaningful public participation. There are lots of acronyms, guys, honestly. I must remind you, I'm from South Africa. English is difficult. Anyway, but the point is that government, there should not be top-down, hang-me-down policy activities. The people that we are developing the policies for needs to be very involved in the process. We have, in the continent, we tend to have a silo syndrome. So we have to try by all means to break down the silos in regulation, in initiatives, and try to define the clarity of roles. There was one particular participant who spoke about the fact that some of the regulations that we have, although they want to regulate the same thing, don't communicate to each other. So, and also there is this underlying, I don't want to call it abuse from the private sector, where at the end of the day is between the politician, who is our government, and the private sector, who eventually will let things lie, you know, the way it is, and the regulation will literally end up being a tick box activity because of the powers that the corporations have. Yeah, and then in the end, we were saying whatever that comes out of this conversation, the framework that comes out of this should be it should be in 3 forms. It should have the component of human rights, it must have the technical component, and it must have a very intensive regulatory component. Thank you very much. I am still, I still wonder why I was nominated, you know, but I know the person who nominated me, they will come to South Africa and I will retaliate. Yes.
Thank you so much. You better retaliate in a very nice way. Retaliation goes two ways, okay? All right, group three is ready now. Sarah?
Yes, thank you. So group 3, some of the issues. Thank you. Yeah. Yes, group 3, some of the issues we identified or, you know, we saw through similar to the rest issues around regulations and overregulation on the continent, and how then this sort of impacts what we would see as free and open and accessible internet. We also looked at the issues of multinationals not being held accountable for the misuse of data on the continent. And so how then would this look like? Another issue we identified was to decolonize the internet. Basically, we have very similar players in the sector safeguarding and gatekeeping this. And another issue we looked at was also on the issues of online gender-based violence in the form of cyberbullying and the rest. And we also identify information disorders, so mis and disinformation, online propaganda or fake news. And so, yes, we, in looking at what GDC should do, we noticed rather one of the things it's very controversial, but we agreed as a group that the UN tends to be very hands-off in a number of issues. So to try and leverage on very specific, pre-existing legislation and laws in sort of implementing this. And our key messages are actually 5. To come up with independent continental regulation. So that government is not over-infringing on particular internet, and multinationals are also not getting away with mishaps. Sorry, and there's also the contextual digital cooperation. The idea is what is good for the North should also be good for the global South. And in this, we were addressing, certain things that, various actors are able to get away in the global South, but are not applicable to the global North. So this, we thought that one of our key messages is that we need to make sure the digital cooperation across the board is sort of reinforced. Another key message is the investment of digital literacy, particularly on the safe use of the internet. This hasn't been done, and also we were calling for the affordable internet for all to make sure that we are not leaving key populations behind. And at the core of this is also respect for fundamental rights for everyone on the continent. And lastly, it's to encourage investments for African solutions developed by Africans, because we've realized a lot of African sort of oriented solutions do not get the support that the other sort of institution gets. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you to the other 2 presenters as well. Much, much appreciated. So I can see that there's a hand up at the back. Nana has a comment. Yes. Here we go.
Thank you very much. I raised my hand when the second group spoke. Is there someone here who has heard about net neutrality, network neutrality? I think they all went around it, but did not bring out the word. And I think this is one thing we might want to contribute to the GDC. Network neutrality basically means that when you have a bypass, all cars are welcome as soon as they can pay. That's all. Network neutrality is one of the things that supports the infrastructure interoperability of the internet. And in many places in Africa, we get ourselves tied into these vendor lock-in that are accompanied by non-neutrality of the network. Someone talked about infrastructure sharing. So I just wanted to put it out here because I felt it across all 3 groups. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot for that.